We got to ask you about your thoughts on the situation here in Vancouver. I mean, we've seen Spencer Martin and Thatcher Demko, I think, post pretty similar numbers when you're talking about save percentage and the simple stats for goalies. Goals saved above average, we're seeing a little bit of a difference there. Spencer Martin's played a little bit better when you start to look at some of those, and his record kind of shows it as well. Spencer Martin has won quite a few more games here than Thatcher Demko this season, but that was one of the things Canucks fans were kind of locking in as not having a question mark going into this season. And, that's how things happen in Vancouver. You think something's a lock. It hasn't happened so far this season. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing from the outside looking in here with Thatcher Demko and what's going on early on this year?
Well, to me, Thatcher really had no choice but to carry the mail early in the season. Spencer Martin didn't have a big track record at the NHL level. Demko had earned the right to play a lot of games. And you just look at how putrid that Vancouver team was in front of him, especially early. And, you kept hearing it from Jim Rutherford, who I keep wanting to call him the GM because he's the only mouthpiece of the team. And I wonder if Patrick Alvin is just a hologram. I don't know if he exists, but you continually hear Rutherford say we shouldn't be doing this with the goalie we have. We should be good. Blah blah blah. Well, Demko couldn't make up for the fact that Vancouver had 1.5 quality defensemen at the start of the year and a bunch of 5-6s that play to fill out the rest of that group. And it's not just that; it's also the system. Like, it's just been massively loose in front of him. And I think, if anything, with Demko, you could see it finally started to wear on him. There were some goals that surprised me a little bit, but when I went back through everything, he wasn't getting beat clean by shots. He was tracking the puck pretty well. If anything, I thought he was sitting a little bit low in his stance, and I thought that maybe he was a little bit aggressive at times with his depth on some rush chances. And I thought you overutilized RVH occasionally, and he'd get stuck in that save selection or post integration would kind of prevent him from arriving on time occasionally. And that's kind of symptomatic of things that you've seen with some goalies that use Clark's system. They can over rely on RVH in situations where I would prefer not to be in it, when the puck's in the corner or along the half wall. But largely, I think, when it comes to that comparison, Vancouver scored more goals in front of Martin. They've played a little better. Okay. It's just kind of how it's been. And I think Spencer's had a couple of really big games that have probably buoyed his numbers. So basically, long story short, I think Demko hasn't been great, but I think he's really had a tough sled in front of him with that club. And I think by the end of the season, you'd expect Demko to be better as this team hopefully improves as well. Numbers-wise, statistically speaking, you just hope that his confidence can stay at a level that's decent, because, man, when you're watching pucks fly by you that many times at the start of the year, it can wear on you and turn into a bad season real quick.
Mike, you brought up post-integration, RVH, music to my ears. Faber's seething over here because I talk about that stuff and he gets super upset about it. But you brought up confidence there, and I find that really interesting with Thatcher Demko. My question for you is just how much of what Demko is going through right now is between the ears rather than what it is on the ice?
I really don't think it's a whole lot with him. He's a pretty strong goalie, I think. It's just there have been – if you look at his body language compared to other goalies in the league that have struggled, I think his body language has been pretty good, okay? Like, if you look at Jack Campbell, it looks like he's been stabbed in the chest 8 times every time a puck goes in.
Yeah.
And if you look at Cal Peterson, how goals have gone in on Cal Peterson, who was just waived on Wednesday and subsequently cleared waivers today, it looked like Cal Peterson wanted to cry after every goal against. Like, you could see it on his face, And Demko, to me, has managed to stay pretty even keel. Like, obviously there's disappointment involved and you can see it occasionally. But I think outwardly he's been pretty good with it. It's just occasionally the chances and the goals against that go in where, I can remember one shot from the point that just somehow got under his pad. And it was kind of like, what is going on here is what I think Demko was thinking, right? It's like, for him, I think it's more about how do I think my way out of what's going on, as opposed to, oh, it was me. I'm not doing this right. What's wrong? I just think for Demko, it's kind of, come on, man, let's get this together. Like, you can outthink this. We can figure out a better way. I do think he's a pretty mentally strong goaltender. And yeah, I mean, I think he's, maybe you guys object, I think he's been, shown pretty decently lately. I mean, of course, there's going to be a couple blow-up games here and there, but it's starting to turn a little bit more in the right direction.
It was interesting, actually, today with Roberto Luongo, and he joked about, like, once he discovered Twitter and was able to, like, have some fun, not take himself so serious. I wonder if there's not the same moment. I don't want to see Demko start making jokes on Twitter full time. Like, I mean, maybe it'd be fun.
I
It would
would.
be cool.
I'd
Yeah.
love to see that.
Something like that would be great. But I mean, with him, like, he's still. I know that goalies come into the NHL a little bit older than some of these 18-year-olds out of the draft, but I wonder, do you think there might be a point where that something clicks with him to kind of just change his mindset a little bit? Because I do think that though he's a mentally strong goalie when things are going strong and the season's just like a long grind, I do feel like when there's the down moments, it might be hurting his play from the way that he's kind of reacting to being scored on or just not things going his way, it feels like.
Well, you have to find fun and you have to find joy in what you're doing. And, for Luongo, I think that was a release for him to be able to have a social media outlet, even an unconfirmed one that wasn't him, but it was him for so long. It was the biggest inside joke in hockey, it felt like. And for me, I utilized it the same way. I had way more positive interactions through social than I did negative. Even when I was getting lit up for different teams, it wasn't that bad. And I didn't have expectations on me. Everybody thought I was just a call up anyway. That was a warm body, which actually was true. But I do wonder, like, even when Thatcher, I remember when he got called up and I subsequently got sent down, you remember that from 4 years ago when we made that flip flop. We saw each other at the hotel in Toronto, took a picture together. We put it out. I was happy for him, and I'm still happy for him. But he hasn't used social media since then, really. As far as I believe Twitter is just gone for him. And I see this with players that I always wonder when that goes away. If there's something more to it, right? If they don't want to do it, if they don't want to deal with it, if it wasn't fun for them. And that's hard to say. Maybe he just decided, hey, I'm just focusing here. I don't want to deal with it. But it's one of those things that the more you can talk to somebody, if you could talk to them one-on-one in a locker room, you can get a feel for what they do when they get away from the rink to really find some joy in life. And it's just easier with some goalies to gauge that when you find out, oh, this is a person that has other outside interests. Oh, they can make fun of themselves and the other things. So I think as long as Thatcher can find something off the ice to keep them mentally occupied, satisfied, it goes a long way to how you perform on the ice.